This is video file 3 for Caroline Byrne. So I finished off in video file 2 talking about the kitchen here, and this is the main water entry point, and that's the valve there for cutting off all of the water supply to the property. That's a new valve that was fitted and it's in good condition. So moving on now to, I was still talking about dampness. I have already talked about the rising damp problem, and I'll discuss that in more detail in Appendix A. But there's also some areas of penetrating damp. This is on the first floor here. So there's dampness kind of around the window. So there's penetrating damp kind of around the window, particularly under some of the windows. And this won't be rising damp, because rising damp would be, rising damp generally only rises about 1.2 meters in the wall. Now it can rise higher in certain circumstances, but generally, you know, it won't rise up to, this is first floor, so it won't have risen up this far. So this will be penetrating damp coming around the window. And, you know, you can prevent penetrating damp around the window by ensuring that the details around the window are done correctly, to ensure that the window is, to ensure that the rain that does flow gets away quickly and flows away from the window. So if there's any gaps around the, let's say, cracks between the frame and the reveal, you know, rain can penetrate and get in. So those details probably need to be looked at. Now, this is a closer view of the penetrating damp around the window and underneath the window. And if I go on to the next page, this is this rusting here. You can see rusting here just on the corner. More than likely what this is a galvanized bead, plaster bead, was used to form this corner. So it's like a metal galvanized strip was fixed to this corner before it was plastered, and that galvanized metal, because of the moisture in the wall, has started to corrode a little bit, and that's why you can see that corrosion there. A good way around this, I think, especially for these particular walls, if you're going to use a beading to help form a corner for plastering, you could use a plastic one which won't corrode. And now ideally these galvanized ones should not corrode, that galvanized metal ones should not corrode, but it might have been, you know, if the plasterer was, you know, polishing the surface too much, he may have rubbed some of the galvanizing off the plaster bead. It may have been low quality galvanizing, and the best way around that is to replace them with plastic. So this is the west bedroom. Again, on the first floor around the window, just underneath the window, you can see that there's kind of dampness penetrating there. This is, so now I know we talked before about the teak windows, and I know you'd like to keep the teak windows and to recondition them and to put in double glazing. Now, I spoke to my window repair specialist. This is the guy that I kind of use for window repairs. And I was asking him about what you're going to do, and he said it's not economical or viable to do repairs on these windows. I mean, he had a colleague who tried to do it on these windows before, basically just to replace the single pane with double glazing, but he had to revise or to form a rebate in the frame the whole way around so that he could fit in the double glazing. And he said it was a nightmare just with the time and effort that he had to put into it. It's not really economical to start putting in double glazing in these windows. You won't really save any money. And the other thing was that, you know, you have to, let's say, even after you get these windows, even after you get double glazing put in, the highest rating that you can get for these teak windows is a C, even after they've been upgraded. Whereas if you put in new PVC windows, then you can get them A rated. So even if you do a very good job, they're still not going to be great. So he said to me that he doesn't do it. He doesn't know anybody who does, you know, do kind of renovations for these windows, and he didn't recommend it. He said, you know, just put them in PVC. If you want to get a timber effect or even a teak effect outside, you can do that in PVC, and it can be like it can be teak effect on the outside and it can be white on the inside if you want to keep the place brighter. So you can do whatever you want with the PVC. But apparently it's very difficult, and there's a lot of work into trying to get these timber frames to you know, to be reconditioned so that they open and close smoothly, and getting the seals done. There's just a huge amount of work, a huge amount of labor in it, and it's not something that's viable. So if you were going to do it for historical reasons, that would be kind of the only reason you would do it, but you'll probably end up paying for it. You'll end up with you know, and you might end up with problems with them 10 years down the line. If there's more distortion in the frames, they don't open and close, they'll be much more difficult to repair and to replace the seals, and you'll have difficulty finding someone who wants to do it. And, you know, I was asking him, is there any salvage value on these teak frames? And he said, no. Most guys who come along and put in PVC windows, when they take out the teak windows, they just dump them. There's no real salvage value on them as far as he was concerned. And that kind of makes sense to me, because, you know, most people, the vast majority of people, replace these kinds of windows with PVC windows. So whether it's an older building or whether it's a more modern building, replacing, you know, everybody seems to just replace the teak windows with PVC windows. So I think that's probably the way you should go, in my opinion anyway. Now, if you want to talk that over in more detail, you can give me a call. This is just a close-up of the windows just to show the condition of them, and that's a further close-up of the teak windows. So, you know, quite a lot of work in just kind of sanding that down and trying to get it to look good. This is a close-up of the doors. There's a little bit of rotting at the base of the frame of the door. Now, okay, so as part of the renovations that the previous owner was doing, she was kind of doing ongoing renovations over years. And one of the things she did do was she dry lined the ground floor bedroom. This is the west bedroom on the ground floor. She's dry lined it. There is some dampness kind of coming through. There's some damp. You can see damp staining here. It's not very visible in the photograph, but there's damp staining here and here and here. If you go on to the next page, this is on the this is the north elevation here. You can see there's more damp staining here. So there is dampness coming through. Now that's probably from rising damp or penetrating damp. You know, the rising damp that's coming up, it can't dry out because the cement render won't allow it to dry out. So it's coming inside, damaging the plasterboard. I have another photograph on the next page. You can see it more significantly here. You can see the dampness in that dry lining. This is around the chimney. It's an internal wall, so you wouldn't expect to see this kind of damp on an internal wall, but it's around the chimney. So I suppose what I would be doing is I'd probably like to replace all of the dry lining, you know, because it's after the land drain has been added externally and the roof has been put on, a new roof has been put on, and, you know, all of the dampness has been taken care of from an external point of view, I would probably remove the dry lining and replace it. Because once plasterboard gets wet or damp, generally it's you know, it's not great. You know, there could be dampness and mold growth behind it. Now it's not soft wet, but it just I wouldn't like to keep it. Now I had previously talked about actually I'll stop this video here and I will talk about this crack here in the next video, in video number 4.